So good morning again, everyone. I think I see some familiar faces from last week, but for those of you that, because we always have to do this in case someone's new, I'm Ted Evans, the Executive Director of Siegal. So it's great to have you here. And again, we are Case Western Reserve University Siegal Lifelong Learning. Last week, we had a really good group of folks out here. We had Kirsten Ellenbogen from the Great Lakes Science Center, and we had Jason Hanley from Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that was a good one. If you guys missed it, you can actually go online and take a look. And then next week we'll be having some more folks, and I'll let you know about those a little bit later. Today we have not one, but two PhDs. We have Bill Griswold from the Cleveland Museum of Art, and we have Chris Kuhar from the Cleveland Metro Parks Zoo. So they will be the speakers today. We'll give you a little on their background a little bit later. With respect to the two speakers today, I've known Chris Kuhar for a number of years now as a member of the Cleveland Zoological Society's Board of Directors. Excuse me. Bill and I also had a great lunch a few weeks ago. Both of these gentlemen, highly intelligent, great individuals, and use their intelligence in ways that are beneficial to our community and their organizations. So I want to make that clear. Also, we have John Grabowski here as the moderator. He's a professor of history at Case Western Reserve University and senior historian at the Western Reserve Historical Society. Yeah, and then last but not least, I want to introduce you, and Andrea, if you don't mind standing up. We have Andrea Rubin. She's our Director of General Studies and Program Marketing, and I want to thank her again for developing the great institutions of Cleveland. We feel it's a great success thus far, and it's going to continue today. So with that, I'll introduce you again to Andrea, or should we hand it to John? Okay, we'll go to John.
Am I clear this time? Because last week I wasn't clear, and I'll blame it on the microphone rather than myself. It sounds like an odd couple, doesn't it? The Cleveland Metro Park Zoo and the Cleveland Museum of Art. Let me do a little history before I introduce both of our guests. But we were moving from downtown last week to University Circle. And you say University Circle, well, the zoo's not there, but the zoo was there. And it started in the 1880s in Wade Park. And yeah, right. And so essentially, then you have the Cleveland Museum of Art, which is the Prince Pride of the Wade Park area. And this all goes back to Jephthah Homer Wade, who basically was, a Western Union Telegraph Company that he started the park. And so they're there in the pinnacle of Cleveland, the University Circle area. And but you moved out to Brookside Park. Because supposedly the animals were too noisy at Wade Park when they were building. Yeah, is that true?
Well, I think it was probably a combination of it being noisy, probably a little smelly, but it was also partly because of the planning for the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Right.
They had this plan to develop the Cleveland Museum of Art, and part of that was to relocate the zoo to Brookside Park, which eventually became Brookside Reservation.
Right, and you actually relocated the old zoo house that was there.
Yeah, so actually our Wade Hall, if you've been to the zoo, there's a Victorian building in the center of the zoo, Wade Hall, which has been a number of things, an ice cream shop, and a bookstore, but it was originally the hay barn at the property in University Circle. The zoo is basically located where the Botanical Garden is today. Mm-hmm. That's where the core of it was, and that building was relocated in the 70s.
Okay, that's why we're together today. This all fits. History does this, doesn't it? So let me get on from this before we start grilling with questions and do a formal introduction. Now, are you ready for this, Bill?
I'm ready.
Okay. William M. Griswold has served as director of the Cleveland Museum of Art since 2014, leading its 450-member team and overseeing a collection of 60,000 works. Since after his arrival, he guided the museum's centennial celebration, completed a $320 million renovation and expansion, and launched the strategic plan, Making Art Matter. And I think that's one of the key things we're going to talk about today, which emphasizes community engagement, audience growth, and diversity. Under his leadership, the museum has presented ambitious exhibitions from painting the modern garden to Monet to Matisse, and then infinity mirrors, and has achieved record attendance membership while pioneering open access to his collection. Free to all the people forever. Right? Fundamentals, yeah, that's what. Previously, Griswold directed the Morgan Library and Museum, I love libraries, and the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and held curatorial leadership roles at the Getty, the Morgan Metropolitan Museum of Art. He's received international honors for his contributions to the arts, including France's Order of Arts and Letters, Cambodia's Royal Order of Samatrel, okay, that's my Cambodian, and the Cleveland Arts Prize, Barbara Robinson Prize. He earned his bachelor's degree at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and his PhD at the Courtauld Institute of Art in London. Chris Kuhar has served as the executive director of the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo since 2013. It's 1 year before, leading operations of the 183-acre facility and guiding major transformations, including the Giraffe Encounter, Tiger Passage, Asian Highlands, Rhino Reserve, Eagle Zip Adventure, Bear Hollow, and the zoo's largest capital project to date, the Primate Forest. It's a far different zoo than I visited when I was a kid. I remember Monkey Island, okay, and that goes back that far. He joined the zoo in 2008 as curator of primates and small mammals after roles at Disney's Animal Kingdom, Zoo Atlanta, Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. Nationally, he served 7 years on the board of directors of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, including as chair in 2020, and he's held multiple leadership roles with AZA. Locally, he is active in Leadership Cleveland and serves on the Ohio Advisory Board for Trust for Public Land. He holds his degrees from the University of Akron, Oklahoma State University, and a PhD in experimental psychology from Georgia Tech. So we have a really cool duo here today. And what I'd like to talk about exactly here is to go into the purpose of the institution. And so I'm it's sort of a repetitious, but what was the impetus for starting the art museum?
So sure, and by the way, I had no idea you moved because of us. We're going to make that up to you.
I love it.
So it's Cleveland philanthropy, as is the case with so many other institutions in our city. During the late 19th century, there were 4 Clevelanders: Horace Kelly, John Huntington, Hinman Hurlbut, and Jephthah Homer Wade, who determined that Cleveland should have an art museum of a stature commensurate with that of our very prosperous and growing city, and each of those 4 men provided for the establishment of an art museum. And as some of you may know, interestingly, it wasn't originally the same art museum. Each of them independently felt that there should be an art museum. So the first 3 of those men made provisions in their estate plans for the establishment of a museum. And in 1892, Jephthah Homer Wade presented the city with the land on which the museum would eventually be built. And that wonderful land deed states that the purpose of that museum should be for the benefit of all the people forever. And so that phrase that it remains kind of core to our mission, goes all the way back to 1892. And so the museum was incorporated in 1913. Our original building by Hubble and Bennis, the Cleveland architectural firm, opened in 1916. Our education department already existed by the time we opened our doors, so education's core to our mission. Fine Arts Garden opened just 10 years later in 1928. And the really remarkable thing, and just to kind of complete this great Cleveland philanthropy story, is that what happened after the foundation of the museum is equally important. In 1958, we received this extraordinary, munificent bequest from Leonard Hanna that made us a real force in the art market. We expanded in 1958, 1971, 1983, and then, as you've already mentioned, between 2005 and 2013, we undertook a monumental $320 million expansion project led by the Uruguayan-born, New York-based architect, Rafael Vignoli, which rationalized the whole museum. But throughout all of this, our mission hasn't changed: to create transformative experiences through art for the benefit of all the people, forever.
Yeah. And the zoo?
How do I follow that?
I think you've got a lot to follow it with.
So the zoo started in 1882. So we're, I believe, the 10th oldest zoo in the United States. And like many zoos of the time, they were started largely as a menagerie, largely to retain a connection to the natural world that was starting to go away with the Industrial Revolution and the move of people into cities. And our zoo actually started with a donation of 73 acres from Jephthah Wade, as well as 14 of the very rare, very elusive white-tailed deer. Those were the first animals in our zoo.
I see them around my house all the time.
I mean, and that shows you how the world's changed, because at the time, white-tailed deer were hunted to basically extinction in Ohio and western Pennsylvania. But as we moved from a rural environment and fewer farmers, the deer have responded in ways that many of us regret. But so the zoo started in 1882. The proposal to start the art museum was about 1907. And then we kind of officially moved in 1915. The zoo was run by the city, started by the city, until about 1940, and it was actually operated by the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. Then in 1957, the Cleveland Zoological Society was formed, and the transfer of the operational responsibilities went over to Cleveland Zoological Society until 1968, when the city passed ownership of the zoo to Cleveland Metro Parks. And then in 1975, the Zoological Society moved operational responsibilities over to the Metro Park. So we've been the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo since 1975. And what we have now is the relationship that you see in most city-run zoos. The vast majority of zoos in the U.S. are nonprofit owned and operated. There's a handful, probably about 20 in the U.S., that are still government owned and operated. And all of those have, or most of those, have a nonprofit support organization, and ours is Cleveland Zoological Society, who began in 1957 and still serves as our philanthropic arm in the community. So we've had a number of different governmental structures and operational structures, but I think what we have now is a very stable and successful one.
Yeah, this brings me to the question as to, you've talked a little bit how the institution has grown and changed, but in changes, what has been the movement? I mean, from being a sort of menagerie with the zoo, the art museum, though, I think was sort of preset in basically education, wasn't it? So what I'm sensing at both places now, if I can sort of impose myself on this, is that you're educational institutions, aren't you? And how did that happen?
So yeah, we're absolutely the foundation of our mission is educational. I mean, we've changed, of course, in many ways, and those are, I think, kind of fascinating. All museums have changed. Initially we were primarily repositories of objects, and over time we've become convening places. We've leaned into our educational mission, and the activities that we conduct have changed accordingly.
Yeah. Now, Parade the Circle is part of the isn't it?
Absolutely. There are all kinds of community engagement efforts that have blossomed over the past few years. Our community arts department, which is responsible for Parade the Circle, was created in the 1990s. We now have a community arts center on the near west side. So we've done a lot with community engagement, not just Parade the Circle, but Chalk Festival, all kinds of big programs like that.
Yeah. So this is, I think, something that is really transformative in the city, as you're going from what I would say maybe some people would see as an elite institution to an institution that's really focused now, particularly on the neighborhood around you now.
Well, and beyond, and beyond. I mean, we have two West Side satellites now, near West Side satellites, Transformer Station and the Community Arts Center. And what we do, even in University Circle, has evolved over time in many, many ways as we've become more responsive to our audiences. So our collection has changed. For example, we you know, when the Cleveland Museum of Art was founded, we didn't really think a lot about photography or contemporary art. In more recent years, we've tried very hard to ensure that everyone who comes to the museum sees themselves as well as has the opportunity to discover the artistic heritage of others. And so we've been acquiring more works by African American artists, Indigenous American artists, Latin American artists, works by women. We've begun to display Judaica in a way that we didn't in the past. So we've really kind of evolved dramatically.
Yeah, yeah. And Chris, the same thing's happened with the zoo. It has become something far different than it was.
And I think it'll continue to evolve. You know, I would say, you know, we were menageries, we were collectors of animals, right? We were collectors of living artifacts for a long time. And a lot of that changed really in the late 60s and early 70s. And I often use the 12th Cuyahoga River fire, emphasis on 12th, not the Cuyahoga River fire, because that's when a lot of legislation changed, right? You got a lot of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act there in the early 70s. And the Endangered Species Act in particular really prevents zoos from going out and just collecting animals from the wild and bringing them into the zoo. I think people still think that that happens. It really hasn't happened since the early 70s. So it forced zoos to think differently about their operations, to think differently about you know, self-sustaining populations within zoos, within countries. So we've really embraced science, we've embraced education, so we've really done a lot in the way of education programs over the years, and I think that's how people think of zoos, as a place of biology learning. But we've also now layered on that the conservation of species, because I think as culture changes, as organization changes, we recognize that if we're going to hold these animals, there needs to be a higher purpose. And for us, that higher purpose is conservation of those species in the wild. And now you're seeing us at this sort of next level of evolution, where we're starting to look at ourselves not just as a wildlife organization, but as an organization that really operates at this intersection of people, wildlife, and habitat, right? And habitat in particular is important to both people and wildlife. And this is really where we work. So we've evolved our education messaging from just facts, because facts are cheap, right? We carry them all around in our pockets now, right? So we're really trying to think about being involved in the world, being involved in the community, both for wildlife, but also for people. We need clean air, we need clean water, and those are really important to animals as well. So our message, our educational product continues to evolve to meet the needs of the community.
Yeah, I like the link to the burning river, because that was a wake up and an environment, and now, you know, the zoo is looking at that as well.
When I do lectures, I often say that Cleveland's really the birthplace of the environmental movement. It doesn't get thought about like that. It's a punchline for talk shows and things like that about the fire, but quite honestly, every major city had a river fire at some point in their history, because that's just how industry worked. That one fire got the attention of the world because it ended up in Time magazine, and that triggered a lot of activity. And you know, the Stokes brothers did a lot of work from that perspective to really make Cleveland the ground zero of the modern environmental movement.
So when you have young people coming to the zoo, do you basically teach environmental lessons, or is it just a look-see, or is there a program that they get as they go through?
Yes, all of the above, right?
Okay, thank you.
So, and it depends on what you're looking for, right? You can come as a family and see the facts that are, you know, on the interpretive signage or the interactives that we provide as a visitor. There are formal programs that we operate through schools, or we can provide programs that our staff conducts or that the teachers can conduct. We approach this in a number of different ways, and we have education programs that go from pre-K to graduate level. We have graduate students at Case Western that participate in biology. So we're training future biologists and conservation professionals. So we operate at all of those education levels. It just depends on where we can meet you.
Yeah, and that's the same thing you're doing. Right?
Absolutely, and of course we too have a very active joint program in art history and museum studies with Case Western Reserve University. But the work that we do for audiences of all ages is really, really important. And it's changed in some ways that are kind of similar, I think, to what the zoo has done. I mean, education at the Art Museum is no longer just about school visits and studio classes and adult lectures, although we still do all those things. But we do so much more now in response to what our visitors really need. Summer camps and play days and of course programs like the art of wine and the art of beer.
When are those scheduled?
Encourage all of you to come to those.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Speaking a little personal story here. A lot of international students I've taught at Case Western Reserve University, and I had a really good student from China, and I took him over to the Cleveland Museum of Art, and you had the Zodiac exhibit there. Was it Ali? Was it Weiwei? I can't get the
Ai Weiwei.
Ai Weiwei, and he was just blown away that this was sitting here in Cleveland, and so you have an international, reputation, international reach.
I think the work that we do globally is really, really important. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, but we have we undertake exhibitions with institutions all over the world. We also have memoranda of understanding with governments and museums all over the world. So we do a lot, and that global scope of our collection is really core to our identity. And I believe very strongly that the work that we do that really resonates in places like Beijing and Paris really redounds to the benefit of Cleveland.
Yeah. This is known all over. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. I'm going to talk about money. Well, I could ask you about Leonard Hanna Jr. and the $30 million bequest. And I did some numbers on it. That would be worth like $110 million in today's money.
At least. We're very fortunate to have benefited from that kind of amazing philanthropy. It made a huge difference to what the museum has become.
Yeah, my present office at the Western Reserve Historical Society is in the Hanna Mansion in Coralie Hanna's dressing room. So, but yeah, that comes in. And funding for you, yes, it's Metro Parks, but there's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're probably the most unique of the institutions that you're going to talk about because we're government run, and we're supported by the Metro Parks operating levy, which is based in property tax, which has become a very hot topic in the state of Ohio over the past couple months.
Yeah.
But going back to when Governor Kasich really cut municipal funding across the state to provide some tax breaks for the highest earners in the state, we started on a process of reducing our need to rely on the levy. Mm-hmm. So we've taken our operational subsidy at the zoo down from about 75% when I started to less than 35%. So we're focusing on earned revenue. We rely on our nonprofit partner, the Cleveland Zoological Society, to help us with capital projects, help us support conservation projects. So we're really thinking differently, which is why you can talk about our Eagle Zip adventure, a zip line, and you might say, well, why on earth do you have a zip line at the zoo? Well, we've evolved to a place that's much more active, and we're looking at ways to generate revenue, and every dollar that goes, that's produced by that zip line then goes into a capital project that helps support the operation. So we have to think very differently, and we're really proactive about thinking about earned revenue so that we don't rely on property tax and that we're not a burden on the taxpayers.
Yeah, I guess to presage what Kelly Falcone Hall might be saying next week here, is that's the same thing happening at the Western Reserve Historical Society. It's earned income that is big. Yeah, Bill?
Well, I was just going to say, it's our funding picture has changed over time as well. I mean, we are the beneficiaries of an extraordinary endowment. We're very, very fortunate, but we too have had to recalibrate quite a lot. We have relatively few sources of earned revenue, because we offer free general admission. So it's parking, and it's the restaurant, and it's the cafe, and it's the store, and it's the handful of ticketed exhibitions that we do every year. And so for us, increasingly, it's all about individual philanthropy on an annual basis, and about individual foundation, corporate, and government support.
Yeah, and so do both institutions say welcome wedding parties, events?
Absolutely.
We do.
Absolutely, yeah.
We love love.
So you can have a bar mitzvah as well?
We literally built an event center within the zoo for that sole purpose, whether it's weddings, bar mitzvahs, corporate events, proms. We built it just specifically so we can do that, to provide that revenue stream, because then you can get in there and you can add an animal experience. We can sneak some education in on you, but it's an opportunity to support the organization as well as support the mission.
I love that term, sneak some education in, because that's the way it works, doesn't it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we just opened Hollywood on the Cuyahoga at the Historical Society. I'll promo that next week. But yeah, that's good. We're touchy issue. The politics of the country are shifting now. And to what degree are those impacting you? And it's a tough question, but I'm looking at what I would say is quasi-censorship of things, and federal funding is dropping, other issues are going on. How are you existing in that? Is it impacting you? It's instant responses. This is great.
So, I mean, it's obviously a very, very important question. And there are a number of ways to look at it. I mean, in terms of funding, the impact has been for us minimal, and we receive support from the state, we receive support from the county, we receive state support for capital projects, and we just receive very little federal funding. We have had 2 grants that were rescinded, but we've been able to manage that. But I would say that looking at the bigger picture, politics has had, to date, no real impact on our program. And that's the important thing. We lean into our mission to create transformative experiences through art for the benefit of all the people forever. And as an encyclopedic or comprehensive art museum, diversity is a part of our DNA, and we're not afraid of it.
Yep. Bravo. Bravo.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that the environment doesn't care whether you're red or blue in your household, right? So we're talking about things that are practical and have real application, and we try to be welcoming to all groups, regardless of how you think about the world. We base our programs in science, right? Not the interpretation of science, but we base our programs on science. And quite honestly, when you talk to people, the hot button issue often is for us is climate change, right? Yeah. So you don't really have to talk about climate change, right? The zoo is in a floodplain, right? The zoo's built in a floodplain. I don't think they were thinking about that in 1915 when they relocated us, but we're in a 50-year floodplain, and we've had 12 50-year flood events in my 12 years as director.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a math major, but something seems wrong with that, right?
It's
when you talk to people about weather, it's not like the weather that it was when we grew up. It's changed. It's different. And so you don't have to talk at the high-level rhetoric. You can talk about the real-world applications to people today, whether they're here in Northeast Ohio or in our programs in Tanzania or Rwanda or wherever they may be. So we just stay grounded in our mission, just like Bill said. We really want to focus on that. And the politics swing back and forth over time, but you have to stay the course to be a long-term institution.
Yeah. So Big Creek continues to get bigger, right?
On occasion, on occasion it gets much bigger,
That's an interesting move. That's when you went down to Brookside, Brookside Park, which was 1894, the park district. I picked that up, and then you sent down there, and it's there were ball fields and everything else there. So it was very much an entertainment complex, to go back to my first question, and you've moved away from that. There are mission messages that come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic because the leader in moving the zoo to its location now is William Stinchcomb, who would eventually become the first director of Cleveland Metro Parks. So the zoo moved around 1915, and 1917 Cleveland Metro Parks was incorporated, and Brookside Reservation eventually became part of the Cleveland Metro Park system. And my father-in-law tells me stories about how he used to go to Brookside Reservation and play in the circular pool that was there, and all of these stories. So it has evolved, but we try to stay connected to that community, and I think the community in Old Brooklyn is really proud to have the zoo there. Yeah, we're proud to be a neighbor.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So I'm thinking the other thing that's going on now, and it's been going on for a while, is the digital movement. And I can access a lot of your pictures, Bill, online. Obviously, during COVID, that was a lifesaver for many people. How's that impacting? Does it get into your throughput in terms of visitors, or does it attract visitors? The zoo has essentially the same thing, a good site that people can look at. But I guess it's harder to get into an animal in digital than it is easy. It's easier to get into a painting in digital. So that kind of complex, off-the-wall question. Can we talk about that?
Sure.
The digital movement.
Well, I would say, technology is a tool, whether it's digital or not. Technology is a tool, it's not the answer. So we try to incorporate technology where we can, in digital imagery where we can, both on site and on our website, but it doesn't replace the opportunity to see a painting, the real painting, or to see an animal. There's something real and magical about that experience. So I don't believe that technology is ever going to be able to replace that. I think just like any tool, we have to be smart about how we apply it and how we use it. So we integrate it, and honestly, we find that while people enjoy it in some aspects in the zoo, there's other places where they don't want that technological experience. They want that experience with family and to be connected as a family and to be connected with what they're seeing. So we use it, but I don't think it's ever going to be a huge part of our operation. I think it'll help us support getting people in and out, right? The buying the ticket, the buying items within the zoo. That's continuing to evolve, but the experience itself is still really centered around animals and family.
Okay.
Well, and as important as the original work of art is, and I think always will remain, for us, digital technology has become a really core part of the work that we do in terms of education and interpretation. And as Chris says, it's all about content. It's an invaluable tool, but it's not an end in itself. And we use it, as some of you know, not just on our website, but also on site. We have our Art Lens gallery, which offers these hands-free digital opportunities to understand the works of art that our visitors will encounter on their own in the galleries, and to communicate concepts like form and function and meaning. And that's been incredibly successful. We've done studies that reveal that people who spend a little time in our Art Lens gallery actually spend more time, not less, in front of the permanent collection in our galleries. They have a richer visitor experience. They feel more welcome. So it's been tremendously successful. We're going to redo it again this year. And we've also begun to use technology in our exhibitions. I don't know if any of you saw, because it was toward the end of COVID, but wonderful exhibition called Revealing Krishna, which was an exhibition that used Microsoft HoloLens technology to recontextualize a very early, very important Cambodian sculpture in our collection, and to evoke the lost civilization that produced this sculpture in a place called Phnom Danh near the Vietnamese border in southeastern Cambodia. An amazing show. We've got another one on now on conservation called Pinturicchio Magnified. And of course, as you said, on our website, we're doing so much. We've got open access means that every work in our collection is available, all of them. And of course, we're beginning to use AI.
Yeah, and you've got a great archive too.
A great real and digital
archive. Yeah. This is Leslie Cade.
Leslie Cade remains the director of the Ingalls Library and Museum Archives.
Yeah. Leslie Cade worked for me at the Historical Society prior to that, but that's kind of interesting. There's all these changes that have been going on at the zoo and the art museum, and this is kind of beating the same horse, but there are traditional audiences and new audiences. How have people who are traditional, I use that term, have they accommodated themselves to these shifts and changes?
That's a great question. I think
it's a tough one.
we often talk about the life cycle of a visitor. What we see is typically you come as a kid until you're about 12, 13, and then you decide it's not cool anymore and you stop coming. And then you come when you have kids until they're about 12 or 13, and then you stop coming. And then you come when you have grandkids until they're about 12 or 13. So what we've tried to do is fill in those spaces with opportunities to think differently about the zoo. And a lot of our evening events, whether it's Boo at the Zoo or our Asian Lantern Festival or Wild Winter Lights, we're trying to do things differently to attract that 15 to 25 demographic that we may not necessarily reach, right? So what we're hopeful is that people come in those periods where they're not thinking about the zoo, they come back and say, wow, this is you said earlier, it's not the zoo that you came to when you were a kid. We hear that, and what we want to do is get people back in to see the changes, to see what's inspiring to them, and we're really trying to find different ways to fill in those demographic gaps in who our visitors look like.
Yeah.
And for us, I mean, these are two critically important audiences, and there are some differences between them. It's not black and white, but our traditional visitors constitute an incredibly important audience. There are a few of them in this audience, and these are half of our traditional visitors are members. Many of them are coming for an educational experience. The non-traditional audience, whom we must cultivate and are successfully, I think, cultivating, have different motivations and needs and expectations, and they're looking more for a social experience. And so, this is one of the reasons that programs like Mix and Solstice and City Stages, the performing arts programs that we do in our vast, soaring Ames Family Atrium, which is really a community convening space, those programs are so successful in part because they appeal to new audiences.
I love the chalk paintings that go on outside the art museum.
Just happened, last weekend?
Yes. Right. And that I think 40 years ago those would have been rubbed out or something. Yeah. But that's the change. And the other thing too is the demographics of the city have changed so much. And I think for a long while, having worked in University Circle was this castle on a hill. And the people, as the neighborhood changed around it, the question was, could I go there? And so we're looking at Latinx, we're looking at African American, we're looking at the immigrant people, we're looking at Little Italy as well. And arguably at one point it was, unless you were Signora Botticelli, you really didn't end up down at the art museum. And you might have gotten to the zoo, but has it been a tough road to hoe, or is it working?
It's actually been an exciting process,
Good.
A really exciting process. And I've already referred to some of the ways that our collection has expanded to respond to these changing demographics, with the, and to the expanding canon of artists who are considered great, But our program also has really changed to be more inclusive, more to reach out to new audiences, and that's one of the reasons that, for example, we have the community arts center in the west, in the Clark Fulton neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think the Parade the Circle event is part of that. I see that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and same thing for you, or you've.
Yeah, we've gone on a journey over the past couple of years with a community engagement project where we've actually spent some time in the community asking questions about where the overlap is between what the community wants from us and what we can provide. And it's really important, and it's resulted in us doing a number of things, like we're starting to put out more signage that's in Spanish. There's a large Spanish-speaking community just north of the zoo that we're looking at transportation. How do we get people to our cultural institutions? How do we get people to our zoo? And we're thinking differently about the programs that we offer. We started a cultural concert series this summer, just as another way to engage the community. I think it's all about being welcome and feeling welcome, and we can say that they're welcome, but unless they feel welcome, that's the important part. And we have to think differently and kind of ask them really what would make you feel welcome, and try to do those things.
So this is not top down; it's bottom up that we're looking
Absolutely.
at. Absolutely,
I don't think it works very well.
I don't like to use
top-down.
that word, but that's
Yeah, I think that's what we've been trying to do for
True.
decades, is be top down, and it's not worked that well.
Okay.
And I would say too that one of the fundamental changes in our institutions, and I think this is probably true for you as well as it is for art museums all over the country, and certainly for us, is that we're no longer as much focused on the objects that we hold, and more focused on the audiences that we serve. And we try very hard to be responsive to audience needs in a way that we didn't used to be. We're less preachy than we used to be, or at least I'd like to think so. And we're really committed to serving those audiences in new ways and to functioning also as a convening space and a community space.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because I've just been working with Dennis Barry on our Hollywood on the Cuyahoga exhibit. I've been doing labels. I tend to write long labels, and Dennis truncates stuff. Yeah. So you get that. I'm looking at also the fact that the institutions, your institution in particular, Bill, started out as an educational institute. Frederick Whiting was not an art historian. And so it's right in the beginning of your DNA. So you want to talk a little bit about Frederick Whiting and what he did?
I mean, the museum has had a succession of really outstanding early directors, and Frederick Whiting, it's true, was the person who established the museum as an educational institution and who ensured that we had an education function before we opened our doors, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And we've tried very hard to carry on that tradition.
Yeah. Now, was it true that the armor court was set up to get? The story is, Cleveland was a steel iron making city, so young people would come in and see the use of that.
Well, I believe that is true.
Okay.
And that was consistent with the way that people thought about museums in those days. It was consistent with the way people thought about the Victoria and Albert Museum as a place that would help to provide an education on handicraft.
Yeah, that's right.
But the Armor Court, of course, remains probably the most popular gallery, along with Art Lens, interestingly, in the museum. And of course, if you talk to any Clevelander, as all of you know, the first thing they remember is their visit to the Armor Court.
Yep, that
got me there as a kid.
Thank you, because that's the first thing I went to see. Yeah. So, okay, and let's talk a little bit more about the zoo and the fact. Do you have territory for expansion, or are you locked into where you are?
Well, so we could grow into the Brookside Reservation, right? That's a Metro Parks property, so
Right.
we wouldn't have to do anything. We could grow into that space, but we're a relatively large footprint. We're 183 acres.
Yeah.
We are on 3 different levels, so it's a complicated footprint. So what I'm trying to do is renovate the spaces that we have,
Okay.
right? We have a lot of habitats that probably don't meet modern zoological standards, is sort of the buzzword that we use. So what we're trying to do is improve those spaces in our existing footprint.
Yeah.
I think eventually the zoo probably will expand into Brookside,
Okay.
but that's probably a discussion for my successor.
Yeah.
That probably won't be able to get to that point. I think
Right.
we're going to try to make sure that we fix up the rooms of the house that we have rather than trying to add on rooms.
Yeah. So I may have asked this sideways, but what drove you into your jobs?
So,
I mean, they sound like fun, but I'm not looking at the hard end here.
Well, I mean, of course, I began my career as a curator, and so it was a fascination with and a real love of works of art, original works of art, that drove me into my job. But the leadership role that I now have is one that I found enormously attractive, because it's not just about the objects, it's also about the audience. And I think, too, that ensuring that these institutions remain really vibrant for generations into the future, which means thinking a lot about money also, is actually, I mean, that's part of the fun. Yeah. And we certainly have an extraordinarily supportive community as well, and that's critical. And so that's why this is the longest that I've been in any job in my life, and I'm never leaving Cleveland. So that's
Bravo.
So I'll say, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, right? So I went to get a biology degree, and I didn't really know what that meant, right? In my head, I was either going to be a steelworker or a shortstop, and neither of those were really practical.
Welcome to the club.
I grew up, I grew up in Lorraine, so that's what you did, right? You tried to get out through athletics, or you were a steelworker. But I literally took a class at the University of Akron around animal behavior, and I came to the zoo and did a laboratory study at the zoo, and I got the opportunity to talk to a number of animal keepers there, and that's where I first made the connection between the people part of what zoos do and the animal part. And to me, I love animals, but I love what I do because of the people part, the conservation part, the educational impact part. And I didn't recognize that as a college student. So it just became one of those things where doors continued to open around zoos and I kept stepping through them. So I would love to tell you that I always knew I was going to run a zoo, but that would be a bald-faced lie. I just kept kind of going through. I knew I loved the work. I knew I loved the species. I started my work with chimpanzees, and that began in that class at the University of Akron through graduate school, and I just kept making connections in the primate community. So when you get to the point where to be a zoological park director, part of that came from my experience at Disney, where Disney's very much about the money and very much about the guest experience. So I was able to learn a little bit of that, even though I was on the animal side. And we really try now within our organization to tie all of those pieces together, to tie the finances, which can be the fun part, can also be the stressful part, and that guest experience and the mission, and tie that all together. And that's what excites me about the zoo today.
Did you bond with some of the animals when you first?
I'd like to think that I did. I'm not sure that they bonded with me.
Okay.
But when I was a graduate student, one of the projects that I was working on, we were hand rearing monkeys, tamarins, or like about the size of a squirrel. So that's a pretty cool experience for a kid who'd never raised anything. I didn't have any little siblings, and to do that. So those are really special experiences. But I will say, when I see the animals react to their keepers that come in their day clothes, that are there as a guest, and I see that connection, I don't get that opportunity. I'm not feeding them. But that connection that the animal care team makes with the animals, that's really special. And I think that's what people really love when they come to a zoo and they can see that interaction. They can't interact with a lion or a gorilla, but they can see the animal care team do the training and make those connections, and that's super powerful.
That's great, yeah. It's kind of interesting because I shared the same thing. I was the first person in college, and I was living at home with my mother, and I had been a chemistry major, and I dropped chemistry, and I basically up for history, and went home and told my mother I changed my major to history, and her response was, "What the hell are you going to do with that?" So I've been fortunate, but yeah, that's the same thing. Well, Bill, what out of all your time at CMA, is there one event, one experience that really resonates with you? I didn't prompt you on this one, so think quickly.
No, but I tell you, that's really hard because there have been so many and so diverse. To see the way that our audiences and especially school kids interact with our collections is always a high point. Some of our exhibitions, including Revealing Krishna, are things I'm really, really proud of. One very recent thing, which is very collection specific, so forgive me, is that we recently acquired one of the most important pieces of sculpture in the museum. Yes, I'm glad. Thank you. A wonderful, the last marble sculpture that will ever enter any museum anywhere in the world by this great artist, John Bologna, the great late Mannerist sculptor. There are only 7 marbles by him that exist, only 2 in America, and now one being ours. So there have been a lot of really wonderful experiences that I've had.
Yeah. So do you have one that sticks out again?
Oh, yeah. Well, so
outside of the monkeys. Yeah.
Well, it's the monkeys.
It's the monkeys. Okay.
So in 2021, we had the birth of the first baby gorilla in our, at the time, 139-year history. And nothing went right? Mom didn't raise him. Mom was sick. We had to hand rear a baby gorilla. And what the team was able to do is innovate. And that's become part of our mission statement, is to talk about innovation. And what our team was able to do was integrate that baby gorilla in with a surrogate mom. On day one, the earliest a zoo had ever done it was about 3 months old. The baby was premature. So it was probably day like -24 or something. And to be able to see that group bond to that animal and watch the team quite honestly take chances, because when you're relinquishing that control and putting an animal back in a group, you don't have control any longer, but you trust that you're able to set up the right circumstances, and to see Kayembe go from being an animal who needed colostrum and needed to be warmed up on day one to be the thriving, crazy hellion that he is right now. And we're 2 baby gorillas in after that, but the team really rewrote the book in our profession about how to think about that. And we rewrote the book about gorilla diet so that globally it's called the Cleveland diet.
Wow.
And it's a
Wow.
produce-based diet,
Wow.
right? So to watch the team innovate and see those connections that they've been able to make and have that result in to the point where Netflix is approaching us and wanting to do a baby animal cam because of what they've heard about Cayambe, and know that we got naming votes from 14 different countries around the world because the team took a chance and did amazing work. I'm super proud of that, and that's not something that I did anything directly, but it was watching the team do what they do, and that's a very, very proud moment.
That's an incredible story. Yeah, that's an incredible story. Thank you. I think we're going to open this to the audience in a few seconds, but I'll ask the one question. It's been a quiz I asked before, but what do you see as the future of both your institutions?
So, museums evolve. I think it's really important to say that museums have always evolved. They originated, as medieval Kunstkammern that were, not even open to the general public, and they evolved from the Enlightenment to great public institutions. Our museum will continue to evolve, but I'm sure that it will always have a place in the fabric of our community. It serves a really critical purpose, not only in preserving the artistic heritage of humankind, but also in serving our broader community. And so, I think that it's a little hard to predict how AI, for example, will influence our work. But our museum will continue to change to serve an ever-changing audience.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would say for us, I touched about it a little bit earlier, but we're in the middle of a $120 million construction project. Phase 1 is underway, the primate forest, and really the key aspect of that is it will be a wonderful place to house orangutans and house gorillas. But the messaging in that space is not about the primate, but about the forest. Yeah. And the importance of trees, both for animals and for people, the importance of trees here in Northeast Ohio. So we're kind of tweaking our message to be a little bit that we really operate at this intersection of human health, animal health, and habitat health. And I think that makes us more relevant. I've sort of been on a personal quest for zoo relevancy in my career, and I think that this pathway works really well for our organization. I think it's going to work well for a lot of zoological parks. And this building kind of represents us being able to kind of dive into that as a future path.
That's just incredible. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay.
First of all, congratulations to Dr. Kuhar on the zoo getting the AZA gold standard reaccreditation.
Thank you very much.
I have 2 very different questions. First of all, for Dr. Kuhar, I know you're taking a very fiscally conservative approach to the rainforest renovation. What do you think it'll take to get you over the finish line so you can announce that all your goals or all your dreams will actually come to fruition? And then secondly, to Dr. Griswold, some of your predecessors have actually sort of openly disdained the idea of the museum playing a role in preserving and educating about Cleveland and Ohio artists. And I'm curious, do you see the museum as having a role for that? Do you see that some other institution should be stepping up? Because right now, nobody is doing much about educating the community about its own history.
So I guess I'll start and say, how do we make the dreams come true? I think a $120 million donation was mentioned earlier. That would be a great start. So, I mean, we're in the midst of fundraising for the largest, capital project that Cleveland Metro Parks has ever done. So, to be able to complete that and see that implemented, I think it'll change the front entrance of the zoo. It'll change the visitor experience. It'll bring tourism to the zoo in a different way. And so I think that allows us to communicate a lot of those messages. So, I hate to put so much mission impact on a capital project, but I think in this case it really does matter because I think it sets the stage for us to talk differently about our mission and the impact that we can have. So that is really key for us, is to be able to get through that capital campaign and get that building open and really talk differently about ourselves and the impact we can have on the community.
And obviously a completely different question, but absolutely, the Cleveland Museum of Art has a real obligation to the community. And the question of striking the right balance between our service to local artists and local art history and the global story that we also, and very importantly, tell is an important and often challenging one. The art scene in Cleveland has changed over time in all kinds of ways. So there are other institutions that can and I think also must play a role. MoCA is one. Spaces, of course, didn't exist when we were founded. But I think that there are a number of things that a number of points that I might make that suggests that this remains important to me and to us. We do have a Cleveland gallery, as you know, at the museum, in which we do exhibit works by Cleveland artists. And the history of art in Cleveland is something that we routinely celebrate, as we did recently in an exhibition called Karamu Artists, Inc., which was an exhibition on the printmaking workshop at Karamu House. We currently have a really wonderful exhibition on Rose Ironworks, which focuses on our great Muse with Violin screen, but really explores the whole history of that legendary Cleveland firm. And it's important, too, that we engage contemporary Cleveland artists or contemporary regional artists. We have an exhibition coming up on the work of Ann Hamilton, for example, great regional artist. And just last night, we opened at Transformer Station an exhibition on the work of 4 Front Fellows, who are all emerging mid-career Cleveland-based artists. So we've got to continue to do all those things, and to expand them, and yet at the same time to balance them with the rest of the other aspects of our work, because I continue to believe that the other aspect of our work, that global context, is also one of the greatest benefits that we bring to Cleveland, because no one else can do it.
Other questions?
Last week, we talked a little bit about the role that these great institutions play in making Cleveland a tourism destination. So I'm wondering what you see your role in doing that is, and if you're being proactive in that.
Okay, first. Yes, it's really important, and I have to say, on some level, and this is probably true for some of you, it's profoundly frustrating to me that New Yorkers who go to a lot of museums in New York have, in many cases, never been to Cleveland. It just makes no sense. I mean, this is a truly outstanding repository of great art. So yes, I think that we can collectively do more. We are promoting our work not only nationally but internationally. The audience that we're trying primarily to drive to the museum is more regional. And our chief marketing officer, Todd Messick, is here and is someone who could talk with you about that. But we're very aware of the reputation of the museum globally, and my aspiration is that we'll be able to bring more people to Cleveland, because when they come and discover what we have, they are awestruck by it. We're trying to do ever more to bring them here.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit challenging for zoos because, and think in some people's minds, an elephant is an elephant and is an elephant, right? And if you can see it in Columbus and you can see it in Toledo, why bother to see it in Cleveland? So much of that is dependent upon the capital projects. It's about how you display the animal. It's about how you build your programs. And we're really trying to do more to bring a lot of that husbandry out front. It used to be something that we used to hide, right? We didn't ever want to show bars. We didn't ever want to show the management piece. And what we're finding is that makes a real strong connection with people. So a lot of our capital projects now include bringing that husbandry to the front. And that's really engaging, and people like that. So what we're starting to see is people coming to our zoo to see that aspect of the zoo. Yeah, it's bears and tigers and all of that stuff, but it's also the way we exhibit them and the way we care for them that's really powerful. And we know that there is a group of people that go around the country visiting zoos, right? It's check, we collected that one, we moved on to the next one. And I think that Primate Forest provides us a really wonderful opportunity to really lean into that and be a tourism destination because of that. The rainforest did it when the rainforest was open. That was 30 plus years ago. So we're trying to think about this differently.
My question is about recruiting, given the very impressive calibers of your staffs. And can you talk a little bit about what challenges you might go through to attract the talent, including, do you have to sell Cleveland? Is that still an issue?
Yes, we have to sell Cleveland. We're very successful with boomerangs, right? So you get a lot of folks that started here in Northeast Ohio, they went away to school, they bounced around the country, but this is a wonderful place to live, so they know that and they're willing to come back. My challenge is getting people off the coasts, getting people out of the Southeast to come to a winter environment. And having cultural institutions like the Art Museum, like the Science Center and the Rock Hall that were featured last week, having those assets are tremendously important, because we can sell big city amenities at a middle-sized city cost and livability. But you have to have that conversation. You have to be able to get people interested enough to have that conversation. So you do have to sell the city, but I think we can do it when we have that conversation.
And I'll just say, absolutely, all of that is true for us as well. I would say that, because of those extraordinary cultural amenities that we have here, amazing healthcare, all of those things, a great housing stock, a relatively affordable city, we've actually been pretty successful at recruiting people to Cleveland, and recruiting them not only from the coasts, but also from abroad. We're constantly seeking, as is true at great universities, great cultural institutions throughout the city. We are recruiting people from not just the U.S., but from all over. And our curatorial staff includes the top specialists in the world in their areas, from Germany in 2 cases, from the Netherlands, from all over, and so we've been successful. But I think that's because Cleveland really is a wonderful place to move, and people learn that and are very happy here, and they come and they stay.
I have a question for each of you. Dr. Griswold, first of all, I love Marrakesh, and the Rose exhibit is tremendous. And I got a great email yesterday, I guess it's sent to members, which was much clearer about the events. So it's the first one I've gotten like that, and it was very good. I'm interested in the hot button issue of provenance in your world, and how that affects what you purchase and what the history of that is, because I don't know if it was, you look at the Elgin Marble issue and what's happened with that, and isn't a lot of the stuff you've gotten years ago from God knows where, and a lot of it has provenance issues. That's my question for you. And for you, I just wanted you to maybe comment on the legacy of Jane Goodall, having lost her this week, because it was on my mind. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start. Provenance issues have become, a very important topic in my field, and I'm particularly involved in the way that our field responds to these issues. I'm the chair of the Cultural Property Task Force of the Association of Art Museum Directors, which is the body that is composed of the 250 largest museums in North America. A couple of things. With new acquisitions, we conduct such exhaustive provenance research that we are unlikely, I think, to have another issue. But standards have changed, and that's what's happened, that we didn't used to conduct this kind of research. The rules have changed a little bit, but one could certainly argue that museums should have done more in the past. Hard to rewrite the past. And so what is and remains problematic are some, not by any means all, but some of the works that have been in the collection for a longer period of time, particularly those that are archaeological, that originated in burial contexts. And there have been a number of high-profile restitutions from the Cleveland Museum of Art in recent years. And I think that they are illustrative of the way that we respond to these issues. We try always to be proactive. We try always to work very closely with the country of modern discovery of these works. One good example is the transfer some years ago of our statue of Hanuman to the Kingdom of Cambodia. This is an object that we had no idea when we acquired it had, in all likelihood, been removed illicitly and in 4 pieces from an archaeological site at a place called Koh Ker, not far from Siem Reap in Cambodia. And we learned that this might be an issue. We conducted our own research on 3 continents, in Europe, in Asia, and in the US, and came to the conclusion that that work, almost certainly had been illicitly removed from this temple between 1968 and 1972. And we actually proactively went to Cambodia. No one responded to my letters, so with counsel, I just went to see the minister in Cambodia, and told him we would be there on a certain date, and we compared the evidence that each of us had, because they had been thinking about this sculpture, and we were persuaded that it should be returned to Cambodia, and we did so. At that time, entering into a memorandum of understanding with the National Museum in Phnom Penh, which we're about to renew for the 3rd time, and which has led to all kinds of mutual benefit. Loans from Cambodia. We do training of Cambodian museum professionals. It's been, this is a good news story. It's been a wonderful partnership, and as I say, we're very likely to sign a 3rd version of this MOU in the coming months. Another more recent case, which I think on the surface of it seems more controversial, concerned an ancient Roman statue, a wonderful bronze statue of a draped figure that the Turks asserted had come from a place in Turkey called Buban. And that sculpture had always been identified as a headless statue of Marcus Aurelius. And when the government of Turkey presented to us the claim that it had come from this site and identified a pedestal on which they felt it might have stood, which was inscribed with the name of Marcus Aurelius, we conducted a lot of research, realized it could not have stood on that pedestal because the holes were in the wrong places. But we didn't abandon this quest for the truth. We actually persuaded the Turks and the Manhattan assistant DA, who also was involved because the Turks had gone to him, that we should undertake further tests on the site. And we found that, in fact, the sculpture, the lead plug under one of the feet of the sculpture was an absolute match for the traces of lead that were in a hole on another uninscribed pedestal at the same site. And upon learning this, we immediately agreed that sculpture should be transferred to Turkey, and we immediately entered into another memorandum of understanding that will, again, be beneficial to both parties. So that, I think, is what the future is. It is not to hold on to these objects in the face of evidence that they might have been removed illegally or unethically. Rather, it is to work closely with countries, source countries, to create opportunities for cooperation and friendship. And my experience has been that those do come to fruition and are very positive.
So, as far as Dr. Goodall goes, I mentioned that I started my career working with chimpanzees. I read her memoir early on in my career. I had the opportunity to see her speak multiple times. I'm finding out that in my professional circle, everyone has a selfie of them with Jane Goodall, except apparently me. But I think what Jane did was really provide hope for a lot of people. She was a wonderful advocate for women scientists in a time period when there weren't a lot of women biologists, particularly field biologists. So she was an advocate for women. She was an advocate for children and families. And the Jane Goodall Institute's Roots for Shoots program has been successful all over the world and inspiring kids to be part of those programs. We didn't have a lot of work with Jane's organization. We're a guerrilla organization. So Louis Leakey put 3 female biologists into the field to work with great apes. Jane worked with chimpanzees, Barute Galdikas worked with orangutans, and Diane Fossey worked with gorillas. And we work really closely with the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund and continue to support her legacy. But Jane was literally just traveling, talking about conservation and chimpanzees just within weeks. She was with a friend of mine in Chicago. So she did amazing work, and she'll be missed. But in a time period where people are often successful by creating divisiveness, she did not do that. She was inspiring to a lot of people and did not divide. She inspired and united.
That's great.
I'd just like to go from chimpanzees back to the Marcus Aurelius, so to speak. We'll call him the Togatus, which he was. And I thought it was admirable the way that the museum displayed in the rotunda, gave the whole explanation to the public, and you could go and worship Marcus Aurelius once more before he left us. But the whole explanation was very clear to the public of what had been discovered and what our mistakes were and what was going on. It was very important to convey this, I think, to the public in such a way.
I mean, I really appreciate your saying that. I should also express my gratitude to the Turkish government who permitted us to continue to display the sculpture. They didn't have to do that, and I'm really appreciative of that. And the key point here is that in my experience, museums want to do the right thing. It's just not always clear what the right thing is. But we believe in utter transparency, and that's what we try to achieve with that sculpture and with everything we do.
First of all, thank you for your enthusiasm in running 2 of our gems from Cleveland. I think many of us have traveled widely and been very happy to come back here in no small part due to these institutions, and we're very proud when family and friends visit. My question is not about that. Our book club recently read All the Beauty in the World about the Guard Corps at the Met and the extreme training, camaraderie. There were 300 guards from all over the world. Can you briefly tell us about our Guard Corps here?
So, a couple of things. I have to read that book. I haven't read it. Our Guard Corps is fabulous. And I think everybody's had that experience. It is a remarkable, remarkable group of people. It is a group that is composed of many young people who are students. It is a group that is composed of former teachers. Many of our guards are artists. We do a staff art show every couple of years at Transformer Station, and it is amazing what this group produces. They're also they care deeply about the visitor experience. They've really leaned into training the new members of that Corps of Guards to welcome people so that everyone feels that the Cleveland Museum of Art belongs to them. It is an amazing, amazing group. And pulling the lens back even a little further, if anyone were to ask me, what is it you love the most about the Cleveland Museum of Art, I would say it's our team.
I once had the experience of having a group in a gallery, and the guard in that gallery had a work hanging in that gallery. So.
Yes, that was the truth.
Okay, I have a zoo-related question. Will never have anything to do with the art museum. The question won't. I do, but not the question.
Thank you.
Can you speak to how you acquire the animals these days? I mean, early on, I'm assuming safaris and whatever. But now, what's your source?
It's a great question. So we are an accredited member of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is about 250 current members. Probably 220 of those are based here in the United States. There's another 30, maybe more, that are international. So we work within those organizations to create basically captive breeding populations. And they are managed by volunteer groups called Species Survival Plans. We like acronyms, so they're SSPs. And the SSP has a population manager, and that population manager is responsible for maintaining a stud book. So where are all the live animals? Who are they related to? This is very similar to if you're breeding dogs or cats, that sort of stud book, and you're really tracking the genetics. They track those genetics to line breed. We track the genetics to be as diverse of a population as possible because we want to maintain that genetic diversity over 100 years. So the population is then managed by that volunteer group, and every year for every species there's a survey and say, what are your needs for this particular species? So for gorillas, for instance, they may say, what do you need? And an institution may say, well, our old silverback just passed away. We're going to need a new silverback for this group. And through other surveys, someone's like, this teenage boy is being a pain in the butt. He needs to get moved before dad starts to beat him up, right? So they start to make those moves, or this animal in a bachelor group needs to be moved over. So what we do is we cooperatively work with those accredited organizations to move animals for breeding recommendations, for exhibit purposes, for population management purposes. Some zoos have species where you hold a non-breeding group, maybe because you don't have the right space to breed, maybe because you don't have the resources, maybe because the population doesn't need it. So we do that. The ownership of the individual animal, and we do own animals, for the most part is held at the individual organization level, and we put animals out on loan, similar to works of art. We will often donate them. We try to avoid cash transactions whenever possible because we don't want to place a monetary value on an animal and let the outside community say, oh, wait, this is worth X dollars. Well, I'm going to go get me some of those and breed them, and I can sell them to people. So we try to really do, again, loans, donations, moving animals back and forth. And quite honestly, it used to be a lot of loans. It's much more donation-based. So we're moving animals and donating it to that holding institution. Extensive staff tracking the paperwork. And that doesn't even talk about the interstate, transporting animals across state lines and what regulations, and working with the state vet because there may be a disease that's endemic here and not over here, and then you get federal regulations that are layered on top of that. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into maintaining those populations kind of at a theoretical level here, in addition to managing the husbandry of the animals at the individual organizational level.
This is a question for Dr. Griswold. Dr. Griswold, I was just wondering, is there any possibility they're going to be bringing back the May show?
So I just knew that would come up. It's an interesting question. Of course, I've never seen the May show, but I know how people feel about the May show. And I think that my response to that question would in part be rather similar to my response to the question about Cleveland artists and our obligation to Cleveland artists. I do think that the art scene in Cleveland has changed a lot since the May Show was created rather early in the museum's history, and that there are other institutions, including commercial galleries, that help to play that role of celebrating the work of local artists. I also think that we have an obligation to celebrate the work of local artists, as I described with exhibitions like the Ann Hamilton Show, like the Forefront Fellows Show. Will the May Show ever be reconstituted? I doubt it will be reconstituted based on what I know. But I would anticipate that the museum will continue to find new ways to support the work of local artists. I think that's really an essential part of our mission as well.
We have time for one last question. Does anybody have a good concluding question?
Well, back to the babies. Congratulations on the baby rhino.
Thank you very much.
And will it get to stay here?
So yeah, everybody wants to know. That's the challenge with baby animals, is that everybody loves to celebrate them and bonds with them, but eventually we try to follow the natural history of the species. So that means that most animals, when they get to hit those teenage years, it's time for them to go. So going back to that survey work, so the baby rhino will probably stay here 2 to 3 years. It depends upon these kinds of decisions are based upon the gender. Boys have to leave mom earlier than girls have to leave mom for obvious reasons. So it depends on that. It depends on the needs in the population at the time. So if an animal needs to go to be a breeder at a different zoo, then that animal may move sooner than another animal. But we try to follow the natural history of the species. So if they can form family groups where, a lot of primate species, the kids stay in the group, or, depending on the situation, we'll follow that. If they need to move, like rhinos typically move, then we will. And it's a balance of the individual's needs, the organizational's needs, and the population's needs. So the short answer to that is she's going to be here for a little while, so let's enjoy her for a couple years.
I think that ends this. I want to say one thing. This has been an extraordinary discussion, and it really does prove that this city hits well beyond its weight class. I said that last week. And we have incredible institutions here. And just asking questions, I've learned a lot that I didn't know. And I think we need to be very, very proud of this community and what it's done and what it's created. And we need to support those institutions over the years to keep them going. Thank you for being here. Chris, Bill, it's just been fun. Thank you.
Congratulations to the group here. I was just sitting there thinking, if the Cleveland Guardians could hit the ball out of the park like they just did, then they'd be in a different situation. Too soon? So I'll just tell you, next week we have the Children's Museum of Cleveland, Maria Campanelli, Kelly Falcone Hall, Western Reserve Historical Society, and Ed Moydell, Holden Forest and Gardens. So we have those leaders that'll be here. Also, I'll say again, as I said last week, we don't just have the folks in this room. We have about 60 people online, which is amazing to think that 60 people took the time during the day to go online and watch this. So it's fabulous. What I'm going to ask now is for Andrea to take these gentlemen over to the reception room, and then I'll wrap things up in here shortly. So just follow Andrea there. And again, thanks to everyone in this room for attending. I really appreciate it. I want to thank my entire team. Yeah, so they're going to go over to you can give them another hand? Sure, give them another hand. Yeah. Yes, and again, I want to finish that thank you to you all here. It's so important that you join us. We do this for you. I'm continuing to work with our great team to bring more and unique programming that is of interest to you. So having said that, the folks who signed up for the reception, you will head over to room 121. Otherwise, I'll hopefully see the rest of you next week. Thanks very much.